So, how you process Ghana at 11 versus how you process it at 20, I imagine it is really, really different. So, as an American in Ghana, being from there, how did you feel being in the country at 20?
That was a completely different trip. First, I think because it was my choice to go, and also because I was going not to meet all of my family for the first time, but to have this project in mind, which I think helped me kind of keep some of that shyness at bay. I was still staying with my uncle and aunt and cousins, so there was still like a family component to it. But I think like having something that I was there to work on meant that I got to get to know the country on my terms and with my own questions in mind and my own curiosity in mind. And I think that made the trip so much more rewarding. I mean, there were definitely like lots of frustrations, and I wished that my Chui was better. Like there were
Hmm.
moments where I felt kind of out of place, but by the end of that trip, I felt so at ease and at home in a way that I hadn't after the trip when I was 11. So it was really great.
So, when you left, was the book that you wanted to write kind of fully formulated then? Like, you
Mm.
may not know how it ended or whatever, but you had a much better a vision of what you wanted to create.
Yeah, so I had been keeping a diary of just how my research was going, what my days looked like while I was in Ghana for that trip, and I remember the night that I got home from that tour of the Cape Coast Castle, I wrote in the diary, "I'm scared of how much research this novel is going to take," because I knew really kind of immediately what the book needed to be about. I knew that I wanted to kind of focus on this upstairs downstairs dichotomy. I wanted to see what it was like for people who stayed in Ghana in the Gold Coast and see what became of the people who were stolen. And so that vision was clear from the beginning. I didn't have a sense of the structure. I didn't know how long it would take. I didn't know that I was going to kind of move through every generation. I didn't know it was going to be a family novel, a generational novel, but I knew from that moment that I wanted to be able to kind of see these lineages move somehow.
Did you know already that you wanted to tell it from multi points of view?
No, at the time, I thought that it would be a novel that was set in the present. So, if for those who have read the book, like with Marjorie and Marcus, one who was the descendant of enslaved peoples, one who was a Ghanaian immigrant, I wanted to have those two characters be kind of front and center, and then just flash back to 18th century Ghana to the wife of a British slaver and somebody who was taken through the Middle Passage. So that's as far as I had thought it through. The multi POV thing happened probably 3 years later is when I kind of figured out the structure.
So, I am in the process of writing my memoir, which let's
Mm.
not even get started on this, right? It's sorry, I'm on the second round of edits of it, and
Okay.
the one thing that I've learned from this process or knew going in, like how you said that you wrote in your diary, this research is going to be,
Yeah.
kind of intimidating, right? And so for me, it's like, this is my story. If I get this wrong, if I fuck this up, like, how can I
Right.
fuck up my own story, right? But I was worried about that. And as
Yeah.
you said a moment ago about how, like, you remember, you don't know if you have memories of Ghana, you remember what you were told. And so your memory is so
Mm.
much different, right? So being that, you have this sort of twin heritage of being from Ghana and America, how much in the research process did you feel the pressure to get it accurate and to
Mm.
get it right?
I felt so much pressure. I feel like the pressure never left me. Like I felt pressure up through when I sold it. I felt pressure after it came out. Like it felt, I mean, on the one hand, like it's fiction, so there's some level of protection in that. Like I know that I'm going to be privileging things in a very different way than someone who writes nonfiction, and someone whose background is research, or someone who's interested in memoir. I had no interest in looking into my own like family's genealogy. Like I wasn't trying to keep it close in any way. But because I had grown up here, because I grew up in America, I wasn't as familiar with the Ghanaian history in the same way as somebody whose lived experience was in Ghana. And so I dealt with like a lot of feelings of like this kind of imposter syndrome feeling like, am I allowed to write about this? Am I allowed to kind of open this up, talk about this history that sometimes we would rather keep quiet. Like, is it okay for me to do this? And so there was a lot of that. And then too, when you're dealing with these time periods in history, what you find is often that you're looking at books that were written by white people who were colonizers, white people who were slave traders. And that's your primary text to try to figure out a way to see around the things that they're saying and to talk about the people that they are talking about in these derogatory terms, but to give those people their own agency, their own voice. And so that also was a challenge that I was thinking about, like how to make it accurate, but using things that were in this position of judgment. That felt like a challenge too.
So how long did it take you to actually, once you had completed the research, to
Mm.
actually write it?
Okay, so from the idea to when the book came out was 7 years. 7 years total. And I would say the first 3 years of that involved a lot of false starts, a lot of thinking that I was on the path toward writing the book and then realizing that I didn't like it or that it wasn't right or that it just wasn't gelling. So 3 years of kind of messing around, though, ultimately it all is worth it. And then 3 more serious years. And then in the last year was like working with my editor and agent and all of that.
So when did you feel like you had a sellable, idea? Because that's pretty much the goal. Is like you want to sell this
Yeah.
book. So when did you feel like, okay, I think people might buy this?
I probably didn't feel like, okay, people might buy this until about, 3 or 4 years in, when the structure started to gel for me. As I mentioned before, like I thought that the book was going to have a different structure. I thought it'd be set in the present and flash back to 18th century Ghana. And then the moment that I realized that no, the structure needs to be one where we move generationally, where we get to see how these things come from those things, which came from those things, and so on and so forth. Once that became clear, I thought, okay, maybe this is something other people might be interested in too. Like maybe it's not just me. Maybe there's a chance that other people would want to read this too. But that was probably, yeah, like 3 or 4 years in.
So how did it feel when it made the bestseller list, the New York Times bestseller list?
Mind blowing. That truly, I have no language for it. I had wanted to be a writer really kind of for my entire life. Had no idea whether anybody would, other than me and my mom, would like pick up this book. So the fact that there are so many people who have come to it, who have been moved by it, who have kind of found themselves in it, has meant the world to me.
And it, of course, as a good book will do, that does make the bestseller list. And I think Oprah called it one of her favorite books, I believe, as
Yeah.
well. So you get that blessing from, oh, it's a wrap, right?
It's
So
huge.
it's huge. So that suddenly thrust you into celebrity. And how did you
Mm.
feel about that?
Really kind of conflicted because, again, like I had always been a pretty private person, a pretty shy person, and suddenly, my anxiety like went through the roof for every first thing. Like the first time I gave an interview, the first time I had to do a TV show, the first time I had to talk on the radio. Like I just felt like I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and then I would do it, and I'd feel a little calmer. But it's definitely like the part of the career that nobody talks to you about, that you don't really think about. I went to graduate school for creative writing. So, I had been doing this for years and kind of working toward a professional career in this for years, without a full understanding of what the public facing side of it can look like. And it doesn't look like this for most writers. So I should say that right off the bat, but I had no idea how forward, how like public facing I could end up having to be until I was in it.
Who was the person that read your book that you were most surprised about, that you maybe heard about?
Oh, I mean, definitely Ta-Nehisi Coates, because I had no idea that he had the book. My publicist gave it to him without telling me, and I think how it happened is that a friend of mine texted me to say that he was tweeting about the book, because he was like live tweeting as he was reading it. And so I went online and I saw those tweets, and I just, my mind, again, like I just could not contain it in my head that this person who I had admired for so long, because I'd been reading his pieces in the Atlantic like since college. And so that was probably the moment, I think, where I realized that something very special was happening to me.